everybody's doing well this morning. Um, we're gonna do a APR training for the fiscal year 2024 COC APR. There's some changes to the APR. And I know we have some people who have new programs who haven't actually ran the APR, had to run one before and do quarterly reports and stuff like that. So we're going to cover the entire report. And then I'll highlight certain things as we go through it. And it shouldn't take more than an hour. I'll just go through it. Everybody just hold their questions. And when we get to the end, if you have a question, then I'll answer those. So I'm going to mention some areas of the workflow in HMIS that pertains to the report, but I'm not going to go back and forth between like the report and like the client record and everything like that. If you have a PSH grant, there is a new workflow for one of the questions on the APR, and that the training at 2 o'clock will address those. So I'm probably going to do that at the end of that training. So if you do have a PSH grant, if you want to sit through this one since you're already here, and just let us know if you need to see like the 2 o'clock one to learn how to do the moving on assistance data entry for the APR. Okay, share my screen. That's the one I want to share. Okay, so we're going to go to the reports menu. From the report dashboard, we're going to select fiscal year 2024 COC APR. If you have access to just one provider, it'll be a drop-down list here where you can just select a provider that you need to run a report for. Obviously, you have search. If you have more than one, you can pick that one. I made a reporting group for today's training. So I could have every project type included. And we're going to run it for the calendar year 2023. So obviously, at the end of the year, you'd run it for your particular grant year. If you're doing a quarterly report, you want to run it from the beginning of the grant year to the end date of whatever quarter you're running it for. So if we was doing it like, let's say the first quarter 2024, we do 1/1/2024 to 3/31/2024. The second quarter will be 1/1/2024 to June 30th, 2024, and so on and so on. So put the date in and select the type, which should be HUD, and it should be running. This one might take a few extra minutes because I got like 5 different programs in here. Yeah, give me a second to sip some coffee. Okay, once you run it, should say completed. Click the magnifying glass, and the report is going to fill out. So usually at the top, you'll just have your provider information here. That's on the back end of HMIS that we set up. It'll show you the number of households and active households and everything. So the APR actually that gets submitted has different things on HUD side that's based on a grant. So there's questions 1 through 4 that's already going to be filled out. And then question 5 through 27, 28 actually comes directly from this upload file that's at HMIS. Okay. And this is why we try to make sure that the numbers are correct, because it comes directly from the CSV file from this report. So if there's something not showing on this report, it won't get reported, and that'll make more sense as we move along. So the first part, 5A, is the report validations table. It's going to show you the total number of clients. If you have adults and children, it'll break that down by adults and children. Persons with unknown age, number of leavers, which is the number that exited the program. And then it breaks that down by how many of those leavers were adults, because on a lot of the performance measures, it only is going to measure clients that are over the age of 18. So it breaks that down from the leavers. The number of stayers, which is the number that you're going to carry over into the next year's report. Those are people that's still in your program. And then it breaks that down by adults as well. How many veterans, the total number of chronic homeless persons in your program, if you have any youth under the age of 25, any parenting youth under the age of 25 with children, the total number of adult head of households, any child in unknown age head of households, and then the number of stayers in the project 365 days or more, which is usually a higher number for PSH because, you know, there's clients that have been in those programs for multiple years. So it breaks that number down there. Okay. So that's question 5. Question 6A through E, or A through F, is the data quality section of the report. So the first part is the universal data elements and data elements here on the client profile, which is name, social security, date of birth, race and ethnicity, and gender. So it'll show you how many people are missing that information. Sometimes when people are into the name and date of birth of a client, you know, that's right below that on the profile, it says name and date of birth data quality. And as when you put full name reported or full social security reported, if you don't answer that, it'll show up under data issues. And so that's what these are right here. To find out who that is, you would click on the name. Click on the number, and a pop-up will pop up with the name of the person that's in that era. Since this is real clients and I'm using real providers, I won't do that for client confidentiality, but that's how to see who's in there. So you go in, find out who it is, update everything, rerun the report, and the closer you can get this percentage to 0, the better. Okay, the next section is for the universal data elements, which is veteran status, project start date, relationship to head of household, the enrollment COC, and disabling condition. So every client needs to have a relationship to head of household, including the children. Sometimes, while most of the information go into the adult's profile, you have to go into the dependents, children's profile, and make sure you update the relationship to head of household, make them head of household's child, partner, spouse, whatever it might be. The enrollment COC I think now when they changed it in October, this automatically populates to whatever COC it is. So I know we have some people from North Lake on this call. So it's either LA 503 or 506 for the attendees on this call. Disabling condition. If you put yes at the top for the question, does the client have a disability? You have to put a value at the bottom under one of the disability types. So it has to be yes and yes, or no and no. If it's yes and no, it's going to make this error here. Usually that's why you would have an error under disabling condition, because somebody put that the client had a disability, but they didn't put the disability type in the sub-assessment. Okay. So the same thing as the other one, you click, find out who this are, update it, rerun the report. Closest you can get this to 0%, the better. 6C is the income and housing data quality. Destination, which usually means that anybody that you put like unknown disappeared, no exit interview completed, they're going to show up here under the missing for destination. Incoming sources at start, incoming sources at annual assessment, and incoming sources at exit. So the incoming sources at start is just like the disability. If you put yes for does the client have income, you have to put a dollar value under the income sub-assessment, or it's going to show up here as a data quality issue. If you put no, then the values in the sub-assessment need to be no as well. Same thing applies for the income sources at exit. So like if a client's leaving and now they have income and you put no, and that question is still no, it's going to show up as an issue because now one of the sub-assessment values has a yes in it. If you have incoming sources at annual assessment here, if you have an error here, then that means that, well, it could be the same people, but it also could be that you haven't done an annual assessment on those clients. So anybody that's going to be in a program longer than 365 days has to have an annual assessment done, even if the information is not changing. So even if you have somebody, let's say they fixed income $1,000 a month, and they're going to carry that into the next reporting year, you have to go in and do an annual assessment to tell the report that this information still applies to that client. So in this case, normally I want to see this as 0 because if you have any errors here, it's not going to populate the income tables and everything properly because it won't know where to put that information. So a lot of times if someone contacts me about a report, this is the first section I go to because it doesn't really make sense to look at everything else past that if they haven't done all the updates on the clients that's going to be in the program longer than a year. Okay, so same thing, update this and then rerun it. The next section is the chronic homeless data quality, which is basically that section that's right below like the prior living situation where it actually how many times they've been on the street, how many months, the approximate date of homelessness. Um, that's what this section is. And it just shows you who doesn't have a value for one of those answers. Okay. 6E is data quality timeliness. And it just breaks down how many days it took to enter this person into the system. So what it's looking at is the actual date and time that you're logging in to enter the information. So today is February 27th. If I logged in today and I put somebody in with the entry date of February 20th, it's going to put that person in this 7 to 10 days range. Okay. So the thing about the timeliness is this is the one category that you can't correct or update because it's an actual real-time timestamp of when you logged in and entered the information. Okay. So, and it's based on the entry and exit. I know sometimes people say, well, I got to go back and change something. You can change stuff in the assessment after you've already put it in, and this won't affect the timeliness. If you wait to put a person in or exit somebody, then that will affect the timeliness because we can't do anything about the day and time. You know, I wish I could go back and travel in time. That would be cool, but I can't. So yeah, you got to leave this alone. So that's the timeliness. And then 6F is for street outreach and emergency shelter. Would just be clients that's in outreach that don't have a contact within the reporting period that you're running a report for. Okay, so all the data quality, you update that as much as possible, rerun the report, and then we get to question 7, which is the number of persons served. It's broken down by household types. So how many adults with children, without children, with only children, et cetera, et cetera. If it's rapid rehousing or PSH, it'll show you how many people actually moved into housing out of that number. So if that number's not correct or it's too low, you probably have somebody missing move-in dates. 7B is the point of time count of persons on the last Wednesday of January, April, July, and October, which is actually question 4 on the APR, right? So if your housing program, let's say you're supposed to have 20 clients at any given time, on the APR itself, inside Sage that HUD uses, you'll have to key this number in. Actually, I think it's both of them. It's the total number of people, and then it also breaks it down by household. So we just do 7 and 8 together. So 7 is the individuals, 8 is a household served. So if you have like children and stuff, obviously this household number is going to be smaller because out of the however many people we had, 300 something people, it equaled 322 households. Okay. So 20 units in your program, they're going to measure your utilization by how many people you had in January, April, July, and October. Okay. Now, if you're a newer program, this probably is going to be gradually increase over the course of the reporting year, and that's fine. Usually if it's an existing program, if this number is too low, they probably are going to not accept the report unless you have an explanation as to why the utilization wasn't as high as it should be. Okay. And if you're a unity funded program, you know, part of the prioritization ranking is using this number because that's how HUD is grading utilization as well. So that's 7, 8, and 7B. 9A is the number of persons contacted. That's for street outreach. So to show how many people you've made contact with during the reporting period, and then how many people were engaged within that time. So there's a date of engagement on the intake, and the engagement is basically how many people that's been enrolled in the program after you made contact with them. Okay, so that's for street outreach. I don't know if we have anybody doing street outreach on this call. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on that, but keep going. All right. So the new APR 10A is gender. And it has all the different combinations here because now, you know, you can select more than one gender for a client. And so it breaks down all the different possibilities of the gender category. Okay. 11 is age. 12 is race and ethnicity. So prior to October, race and ethnicity was 2 separate categories. So now they've combined the race and ethnicity, and it also has all of the different combinations that you could have because now clients can select multiple categories in the race and ethnicity question. So it has all the different categories here for race and ethnicity. 13A1 is the physical and medical conditions that start. So this was clients entering the program. And then 13B1 is the physical and mental health conditions of clients that exit. 13C is the physical and mental health conditions of the people that's remaining in the program, the stairs. And then 13A2 is the number of conditions that start, how many people had 1, none, 2+, 3+, etc. And 13B is the same thing for conditions that exit. Okay. 13C2 is the same thing for conditions of stairs. All right. 14 is the history of domestic violence. They've reworded this to show history of domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, stalking, or human trafficking. And then 14B is basically it used to say, are you fleeing? And they just reworded it to most recent experience of domestic violence. sexual assault, dating violence, stalking, or human trafficking. Okay, so that's a domestic violence portion. 15 is the prior living situation of clients entering the program. So to show you how many people were literally homeless, how many clients entered from an institution, temporary situation, or from a permanent housing situation. So I know we have a lot of grants that's been consolidated. We have some that have a lot of people that transferred from Rapid to PSH, or from one PSH program to another PSH program. And a lot of those grants are for chronically homeless individuals. And so let's say you have 100 people in the program and you're supposed to serve chronic homeless individuals, but on question 5 at the top where it showed the different breakdown of everybody, there was only, let's say, 75 people in that category. So the reason is probably because if you have any transfers or what have you, they're going to be here under rental by client, with ongoing subsidy or no ongoing subsidy or whatever the case may be. That is fine. Do not change them to show literally homeless again. So the chronic homeless number at the top matches, because then that's going to show up in our reporting as somebody returning to homelessness. And so even if you're supposed to serve chronic homeless individuals, but the total number doesn't equal the same number of chronic, but you had transfers, then that's fine to leave that way. If you don't have anybody like that and it's still not showing the total number as being chronic, then we can figure out why there's something missing that's not matching the definition of chronic. But if it's just because you had people that transferred or you consolidated a different contract and project together, then this number's fine, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Okay. Question 16 is the income ranges of each client. It'll just show you how many people had no income at start, annual assessment, levers, and so on and so forth. 17 is the income sources. Same thing. How many people had earned income at start, annual assessment, at exit when they left, and then it's all the same income categories that's on the sub-assessment for income. 18 is the cash income category, earned income category by start annual assessment, exit status. Okay, so I'm going to make note of something on this question. So it shows that how many people had income, only income, things of that nature. So there's two things about question 18 that I like to use for as like reviewing the report and everything. First thing is there's 34 people here. This is the 34 that didn't have the annual assessment that I talked about when we was talking about 6C for data quality. So if you're trying to show your performance as far as income is concerned, and let's say these 34 people had an increase in income, when we get to question 19, which shows the actual performance measure for income, they're not going to be included in that measure because it's still, this 34 here hasn't been updated. So that's why I said we try to do this first to make sure that these 34 people, because if they do have an increase in income, that's a positive for your program, and you want to make sure they're included in the report. Now also there's 106 adult stayers that are not required to have an annual assessment on this particular report that we're looking at. Those 106 people have not been in the program long enough for their income to be pulled in to the question 19 for to show an increase in income for performance. So I know sometimes we have clients that get income during the middle of the year, or at the beginning of the year. Let's say they have like an increase in their benefits or what have you. You're not going to get credit for it on a reporting, from a reporting standpoint, until that client either exits the program or gets to a point where they need another annual assessment. Okay. So if your grant period ends, let's say in June, and you have a client that has an increase in income in August, right? That person, let's say, yeah, your granted period ends in June. That person has an increase in income in August, but their start date in the program is July. You won't, that person won't show up on the report for that income won't show up on this report until the next July, because basically you're going to get credit once that person either exits or gets to a year. And so you want it that way, because if not, then you'd lose credit for everybody that didn't get income under that same process, right? So the report is designed to give people credit for income or any other performance measures from a yearly basis. That's why it's an annual report. So if you have clients and you say, well, I have more people than that got an increase in income, they may not show up on this report until they get to the annual assessment date. Okay. So I just wanted to make note of that before we got to question 19, which is the actual performance measure for client income. Okay. So A1 and A2 are the same table. A1 is for clients that income by start and latest status. So this is where those 34 people would be that didn't have an annual assessment. Okay. So the clients in the program that been there at least a year, you only get credit for the clients that have an increase in income from the last reporting period or their last update or annual assessment until now. So it's broken down by earned income, other income, which is like benefits and fixed income, and then you get a grand total here. Okay. So that would be your stayers in the program. So you get in this scenario, I probably should have picked somebody, but picked another agency with some people that's in there. That's fine. So there's two people in this table. One of them have an increase in income. And so it's at 50%. Okay. Now you see this person does have income, but it's the same amount as the last assessment, or it's the same amount as they entered the program. So even though we don't have any clients with zero income, we only get credit for the one that had an increase. Okay. So the top part is at 50% because of that scenario. The second part of the income is the income at start and exit. So these would be all the leavers that's exited the program. And basically it's the same thing. You get credit for who did not have it and gained it, or who retained and increased. So you're going to get credit for the people that is in these two categories. Even if you have people who have income like this group, you won't get credit for them. So in this report, it's at 45%. The way I usually add it up is I'll add up this one with this group, and then the total number of clients, which is the total number of adults, and that's the percentage you're going to get. So this is 50, this is 45. And if this was a real report, it'd probably be somewhere like what, 47, 46%. And then so whatever your goal is for your particular contract, that's what you need to look at, is those numbers right here. So make sure you do the annual assessments before you run this report and look at the income. And remember, like I said, even if you increase somebody's income, if it's within the middle of their year before their update, you still won't get credit for it until they get to that point where it's time for another annual assessment, or if for whatever reason they exit the program. 19B is disabling conditions and income for adults that exit. They added this like 2 or 3 years ago. We haven't actually heard anything about, anything negative or positive about this, but this is what this chart is showing. How many people with a disabling condition have these particular sources of income? Question 20A is a type of non-cash benefits. So this is, how many clients had food stamps, WIC, TANF, etc. And then number of non-cash benefit sources is 20B. For Unity's measurement, you get credit for everybody that's 1+ source at exit. So in this case, you would get credit for this 139. You can click on this and figure out who's not in this, who's got 0, and then go back and change that, and then you can rerun it to increase this number if that's not the case. But that's what you would get credit for, the 1+ sources. That's for non-cash benefits, like I said, food stamps, WIC, etc. 21 is health insurance. It just shows the number of clients with health insurance by type at start annual assessment and at exit. I know Unity has a 90-day measurement on their performance sheet. We've never been able to pull that here from the APR. That's something that we would have to manually do, because even if you ran this for 90 days, it still wouldn't populate anything until a client's annual assessment. But this is where it shows the client's health insurance categories. 22A1 is the length of participation. So this is just going based on the entry and exit dates. It just shows you how many people have been in the program for 30 days, last 61, 30 to 61, so on and so forth there. And then your average and median length of stay in the program. 22C is the length of time between project start date and housing move-in date. So this will populate for rapid rehousing and PSH based on the move-in dates. If you have clients that transferred from another program and the move-in date and the start date are the same, right? So let's say somebody's in Rapid and they're going to PSH, or they're already in Rapid, they're going to another Rapid program for whatever reason. You have to do an update that is timestamped after whatever the time is for the entry date into the program. So let's say you was entering somebody today at 10:37 a.m. into the program. When you save their intake information, you need to go to interims and do an update that's at like whatever 10:40 or whatever, because that date needs to be after, that timestamp needs to be after. And so we've had a few situations where people put the move-in date on the intake sheet and everything's timestamped the same, and it didn't show that the person had moved in. So be conscious of that, to make sure you do it as an update. Also, Helen wanted me to make sure to mention that you can't do, the update date needs to be the same as the move-in date. Because some users have used like the day that they were doing the update. So let's say like they did it today at 2:27, but the client's move-in date was actually 2:15. The report is not picking up the move-in date because the update was past the move-in date. I know that's weird, but that's just something that she figured out from helping somebody, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned that while we were on the housing move-in dates. Okay, so make sure that whatever date you're going to put the move-in date is time-stamped after the entry date, and it should be fine because it's 7 days or less, so you won't, if whatever your goal is for how many days for the person to move in, you should be okay doing it that way. So that's what project start date and move in dates for Rapid and PSH. 22E is the length of time prior to housing based on 3.917 date homeless started, which is that date in there in the intake that says what day did your episode of homelessness start. And so this is a pet peeve of mine because one of the system performance measures that HUD uses is length of time homeless. And part of that measure is the self-reported date from the clients. And so I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that when they ask about the approximate date the person's homelessness started, they're talking about the current episode, right? So if a person's been housed for like 2 or 3 years and then they fell back into homelessness and they've been homeless again since January, then that date should be January something 2024, not 2018 when they were homeless the first time. So that's why you get all these people here to 731 days or more. And we have so many people coming in the system. It's hard to track this all the time, but this is a good way to review it yourself. So if you have some chronic homeless clients or whatever, that date might be this big, but you just want to make sure you're not putting any random date in that field on the intake assessment. Okay, so that's what this question 22E is coming from. This is a new question, 22F, which is the length of time project start date and housing move-in date by race and ethnicity. So they just added this question based along race and ethnicity here for clients move-in date and the average length of time by race and ethnicity. 22G is new as well, length of time prior to housing by race and ethnicity based on that start date we talked about. And it breaks that down now by race and ethnicity as well, and it gives the average and median length time by race and ethnicity. So that's another good way to tell if something doesn't seem right from that data perspective. So that's new. 23 is the exit destination. So this is the breakdown of the destinations for the clients in the program, how many went back to street or shelter, safe haven, how many people went to institutional situations, hospital, jail, etc. How many clients exited to temporary situations, like staying to live with family, staying to live with friends, hotel, motel, transitional, or what have you. And then how many people went to permanent housing destinations. So from a performance perspective, these are the people that you get credit for, right? So how many people they would stay to live with friends and family permanently? If it's a HOPWA funded program, move to HOPWA permanent housing, rental by client with no subsidy, with ongoing subsidy. We'll talk about that in a second. Rental by client, owned client, own home. And then, exit interview completed, which was the 9 people that we had under destinations at the top under data quality. I remember you can fix that if that's not true. The other, any clients that's deceased, and then client doesn't know, prefers not to answer. Okay, so to give you a subtotal for each section, to show you your total people that exited altogether. And then you get credit for everybody that's in the permanent housing destination. If you have any deceased clients, it takes them out of the equation, so you don't, you don't get graded or anything for that, right? So anybody that's deceased, I think the other one is like nursing home, might be the other category. There's another one on there. I'm pretty sure it's nursing home they take that out of the equation as well. So those people you don't get held against that. So in this scenario, this one will be 88% based on the number of people that went to permanent housing destinations. 23D is a new question that's added to the APR, which is the subsidy type. So once you put now if you press rental by client with ongoing housing subsidy, it makes you get another question below that that says rental subsidy type. You have to pick a value in there if you put ongoing housing subsidy. So the chart itself on the APR doesn't have a place to show that it's missing, right? So uh so there's 173 here. Let me see what's here. And there's 196 here on the ongoing subsidy. So if you submit this, it's gonna kick this out because this needs to be 196 as well. There's not a data quality report that's showing that as far as like what's missing yet. We're gonna work on something to send everybody before they do the report so they'll know, because you won't be able to tell until they actually get ready to submit it to HUD. But one way to look at it for yourself is whatever you have here under the subsidy type total needs to match what's here under rental by client with ongoing subsidy. So if this is 196, then this should be 196. So we're gonna try to help out, try to figure out how we can tell everybody which 23 is missing, but that needs to match. Okay, without that, the report won't be accepted. Okay, so that's probably like the biggest change when it comes to like all programs across the board, because everybody's exiting people to some sort of subsidy, and they got to make sure they're answering that question. Okay. 23E is a new question as well, which is exit destination type by race and ethnicity. And so it's breaking down how many people went to homeless, institutional, temporary, or permanent by race and ethnicity. Okay. That's a new question as well. 24B is a new question for PSH, which is moving on assistance that I'm going to talk about in the afternoon. And then sexual orientation of adults in PSH, which is a required question for all PSH programs. That is a new question as well as the language of persons requiring translation assistance. So all that section 24 are new questions, and most of section 23. 25 through the rest of the report is basically, so 25 is just it's the same information, but it's just separated for veterans. So if you have any veterans, their information will show up here. If you don't have any veterans, then this won't be populated, but it's basically the age, gender, destination, stuff like that for veterans. And then same thing with the subsidies and everything, but that's just for veterans. 26 is just for chronically homeless. It's the same thing with the gender, race, everything, but specifically, no, I can't say that word, for chronic homeless clients. And if you don't have any chronic homeless clients, obviously you won't have anything there. And then 27 is for any youth in the program. So if you have any parent and youth 18 to 24, then this section will populate as well with the same data elements from the larger report. So those are just categories for youth, veterans, and chronic homeless, but they're all included in this section here up until question 24. So if that's right, then the subpopulation ones are just automatically going to fill in. So that is the APR itself. If everything is correct, once you reviewed everything, you download and it saves a CSV file, and then that's this file that goes to your COC or contract manager or whoever needs to have it. and then that's what gets uploaded. So whatever you upload into Sage is going to come from here. And this is what's going to be reported for your program. So it's I did right on time to have like 10 minutes for some questions. So let me look at the does anybody have any questions? No, Trina, you don't need to do the second one. Y'all good. Nobody has any questions? Is that because I'm an excellent trainer, or y'all just don't have any questions?